Well, Gerrard slipped and get the bars in here. It's Rodriguez again. It's a stunning volley.
What is going on, guys? Jack here, and welcome to week 3 of the ForTheFans Premier League podcast for the 2014-15 season. Today, we're going to be taking a look back to the weekend's action, looking at the transfers, and supplying you guys with our thoughts, views and opinions on the goings-on recently. Let's get straight into this.
It's a magnificent sculpture of a goal, Benji. It's perfection.
Keener, I think you're going to have to be calling for an oxygen mask over here, my friend.
Hello. What's going on here then? It's me, Ben, joined with me, my co-host, Jack. How you doing, Jack?
I'm
joined
decent.
With me. It sounds like you're on me.
I'm not on you, I promise.
No.
Not this time. I'm good.
Good. What have you been up to this week? I'd like to know.
This week, so last week, what happened last week? I don't know what happened last week. The week before that, I was stuck on a boat. I've realised that this podcast makes my life sound extremely exciting.
Was it the bus last week?
It might have been the bus.
I forget. I can't remember.
The highlight of my week was a bus journey last week.
Well, so much happened that we don't know anymore. So what happened this week? This week,
what happened at the Great Question? Well, it was Orange Wednesdays, so I took my mum to the cinema. Buy one, get one free.
What did you see?
In-Betweeners movie.
Not the best choice.
No, my mum's very middle class. She was definitely quite sheltered when she was younger, and the word clunge, she kind of turned to me and goes, "What does that mean?"
Your mum reminds me of my mum. Like, she's very kind of middle of the road, very don't do swearing. I can imagine my mum and your mum actually getting on very well.
Let's not even go there.
Well, why?
Because my mum is like a menace to society.
Yeah, but in what way?
I don't know.
A menace to society. Mrs. Jack, if you're listening, which you may well be, you were following me on Twitter not so long ago. But Jack put a stop to that, didn't you?
I did. Put my foot down. I was like, no, Mum, you can't follow my friends.
That friend. No, not plural. So that's what. So how was that experience? So you sat with your mum?
Yeah, at the cinema. It was quite empty, so that was quite fortunate. But
you sat together? Was it in Lincoln Odeon?
It was in Lincoln Odeon, the one and only.
Okay.
But Orange Wednesday, half price. She was loving it.
She wasn't. It was the in-betweeners. Did she laugh at any point?
She laughed at a few bits, but it was when no one else was laughing.
Can I take you back? How did you sell this? How did you go, so Mum, I'm going to the cinema. Nobody will go with me. Will you come?
Well, no, I was going with my brother and sister, I should clarify. Family day out.
So they were there too?
Yeah, but I was the one who convinced
her. It wasn't just you and your mum then?
That would be slightly more awkward. No.
Oh.
So we were just you can come with us. We'll drag her along, because we had 2 Orange Wednesday codes, so she could get in for free anyway.
Do you mind if we... this is we've not done this on ForTheFans, Jack. Right? You play you. I'll play your mum. Quick role play. Right? So we're going to the cinema. You've got your Orange Wednesday. I'm doing the washing up, because, I'm a loving mother, helping out the family. So, wash.
Yeah.
Wash.
Well, okay, so what happened was, because I know you're not going to act it out correctly as it happened, I just turned to her and went, "Do you want to come see the In-Betweeners movie?" And she turned around and said yes. I was like, I was joking. And she she wouldn't let it die from there. She was like, "I'm coming now. You've offered."
Okay, well, let's go.
Should we talk about football? I feel like this has been a very long ramble.
Well, no, I think we're no longer a football podcast. We've established before, Jack, we're a movie podcast, really, who talk about football.
Yeah.
I feel like there's more to talk about with your mum on the In-Betweeners film, but okay, I will succumb to your pressures and talk about fantasy football. How's that?
That is much better, although, is it better, really?
Let us know. Jack's life or football? Leave your comments down below.
Or fantasy football.
So let's get into this. Fantasy football. With Geordie Wilson and Ben King, Jack, are still leading the way.
They're too good at this, aren't they?
Geordie Wilson has had an average week as well as Ben King, but Geordie Wilson is the first to break 202 points, making an entry into third place. Daniel Mulligan's Falcar Punchin, very good name, has made his way into the top 3. He's a new entry up there. In terms of me, you, and I feel like Ellie's now become part of this show in terms of her fantasy football success. She's now 77th out of 700.
That's not bad at all, is it?
No, it's quite good. Keno's still beating her, but we won't talk about him. I'm 279th. I've had a rise in the rankings of about 300 places. Whereas you, Jackie Balboa, 479th. Explain yourself.
I can't really. I can't.
Okay.
I'll tell you, I can't explain myself. My defence this week, all Everton and Chelsea players.
Oh.
So that's
Really?
that's my excuse. Yep, back three of Cahill, Aspilicueta and John Stones. I had De Gea in goal, and so he saved me a little bit with United's clean sheet, but
quite literally
the defence.
All right, well, fair
It's an
enough.
ideal.
Shout outs to Martin Clegg, Clark Crown, and Chaz. Chaz, you were this week's winner with 78 points. Sterling captain, Matic, Ivanovic, De Gea. You had a very kind of solid, a lot of 7 to 8 points for each player. Clark Crown and Martin Clegg were kind of carried by Captain Diego Costa, who had a particularly good week. We can't go any further without talking about the worst week. The team name, and your mum will like this, as she's a fan of the In-Between, is Penis FC. Do you want to know the team?
Hit me with it. Is it a serious team, or is it a team that someone just picked?
I feel like this is a team picked in the first week of the fantasy football being available to pick, and then he's not looked again, frankly.
I'm just looking at a few of these choices, and it seems like he's picked all the players who underperformed, who he expects to somehow revitalise their careers this season. It's just not happened.
Well, he's gone for Kolarov for City, not awful, because, set piece taker. Kyle Walker, injured. Azlaqueta, as mentioned, conceded 3. Koscielny went off injured after conceding a goal. Sim de Jong, 3-3. Fernandinho didn't play. Adam Johnson got a couple of points. This is a 15-point week.
See, when I saw Johnson down there, I was thinking it was Glenn Johnson. I'm not sure what's worst out of Adam and Glenn.
Soldado was captain, didn't play. And the best one is Fernando Torres, who's in Italy. So I don't think he's paying enough attention to the fantasy football. Anyway, so well done on the fantasy football. Let us know, good week, bad week. Let us know on the Twitter. That's where we like to deal with all the fantasy football stuff. Right then, let's get into some actual football, shall we?
My word, it's been a while getting into this. I've been ready for this football chat, and so far we've talked about fantasy football, Italy, and the In-Betweeners movie.
Yeah, it's a great podcast. The stats don't lie. Manchester City 0, Stoke City 1. It was a former United man with a goal, and what a goal!
It was Juve, wasn't it? He was just pace. He's just a really fast man. Did they sign him from Hanover this year, Stoke?
I believe so.
The reason I know he's fast is because on Football Manager he's one of these players who never re-signs for Hanover, and he's always a free agent. He's always like the fast black man who you can sign up front first year.
Oh, it's like listening to KSI.
I'm sorry.
No,
it's true though. He is just pace and power. Like, you looked at that Stoke team on the counter-attack, it was scary, the pace that they had in that midfield.
And that's something new this season for Stoke. That's not been a thing of the past. Like, they've been a very kind of build-up play, win throw-ins, win corners, win set pieces, knock it in. But now, as you mentioned, they're quite fluid. They've got Asaidi back as well. We'll talk about the transfer window a little bit later. But he's another one that will add to that pace. They've got Arnautovic, Bojan's no slouch. You've got Doof, as you mentioned, who's very quick.
Peter Crouch.
Yeah, Peter Crouch, who is a weapon. I like the fact we were going the same way there. That's hilarious. Did you purely say that because he was interviewed on Match of the Day looking very pleased with himself?
He was. I mean, he was there, wasn't he? Bigging up the pace of the men behind him. For me, I don't think Crouch is that slow. His legs and the strides just help. And whenever I see Peter Crouch on Match of the Day, he always looks like a little bit giddy to get camera time. I think that's why he did the robot. He was desperate for the attention. It was like his final outcry.
Okay, so now we're covering dancing.
Why did he not get drawn into the England squad?
What, based on his dance? It's not strictly. His missus won. She did very well at that. Did she win it? I can't remember.
She might have won Strictly.
What is this podcast?
I don't know. We're now just
covering in England. This has been horrific.
So the X Factor started this weekend or last weekend. We want to talk about that too.
Have you got the lottery result?
No.
What's gone on there? What's happened? No, football. So the story, although Stoke have done very well, winning away at the Etihad, not an easy thing to do at all. Where did it go wrong for City then? Because was it just that goal, or was it a failure to be clinical? We saw on Monday night that they could do it against Liverpool. Why can't they do it against Stoke?
There was a few odd decisions. Stoke could have had a penalty, but there were two, particularly one late on against Yaya Toure, which was definitely a penalty.
So you're saying a bit of luck?
A bit of luck. I think you've got to get a look at the Emirates. I think Stoke had never scored at the Emirates before this. Gosh, where am I?
London,
maybe we should start a general podcast, because apparently I'm just getting names muddled up today. Earlier in the intro, we were talking about Stephen Warnock and Neil Warnock. Where am I? Right.
City, Manchester City. This is a serious football podcast, damn it, and I will not let you ruin it.
I think it's been ruined.
Although I did go on about the in-betweeners earlier. Right.
The point I was going to make was Stoke have never scored at the Etihad. That's right. And they've never won there, obviously, because they've never scored. So I think they rode their luck well, and they obviously took that one chance that came their way. And I guess even that had a bit of luck about it, as Joe Hart kind of forgot to close his legs, really.
Well, should he save it? I think people have been... I don't know if it's just my kind of view on it, but I thought people were being a little bit harsh. I don't think Hart expects Juve to smash it through his legs.
Well, he doesn't exactly smash it, he scuffs it into the ground. I kind of feel like Hart just expects it to go across, and then the scuff kind of just throws him off.
Yeah, I think Hart feels like if I dive either way, it's not going to matter so much, but if he shoots it at me, which is highly unlikely, then it'll probably just hit me anyway, but it turns out it goes straight through his legs. Hart's diving to make it look like he's making an effort to save the ball, obviously reads it wrong, and ends up looking a little bit foolish and gets quite a lot of criticism from all quarters. But Mark Hughes will be pleased to... Old club, remember? Mark Hughes.
Yeah.
He hasn't got that bad a record, I don't think, against going up against City with the clubs he's been at. I could be wrong, but I feel like he's quite successful when going back up against City, the team that he helped kind of build with their millions early doors. Was he not the man to bring in Vincent Kompany? I'm sure he was.
He may well have been.
I could be the most influential player.
Oh, so, without a doubt. I mean, the thing for City is they hit the woodwork. They should have done better. Like, there is no excuse not to score against Stoke, really, but they didn't take the chances that came their way.
And Stoke defended well too.
Stoke did defend well. I mean, there was links of Shawcross to United at one point this week. Obviously, that's not happened. And I'm a big advocate of Shawcross, as you know.
Yeah.
Have been for many years.
We thought your love of Charlie Austin was strong. My word, you should see him on. I'll explain a bit. I want to tell people this because it's funny. We once did on Football Manager. There's such a thing as a free agent database where you can sign anyone. You can go for anyone in the world. Jack's first signing, Ryan Shawcross. Anyone in the world. Anyone.
He's a great English centre back. Him and Elliot Bennett.
Look at that. You're right. It's Ryan. It's true, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. He's one of my favourite players.
Okay, let's go where there's only one goal in that game. Let's go where there was 9 goals, Jack. To Goodison Park, Everton 3, Chelsea 6. Diego Costa was a knob.
This game annoyed me.
Okay, well, because you had defenders your team.
That too. But often with the football, you'll kind of turn it on at the start of the game, and you'll kind of go and ferry in and out of the room, won't you? Doing jobs, just before the football. You think I'll settle down in the 5th minute and it'll be fine. So I turn it on, leave the room to do the dishwasher, hear a cheer, come through. Oh, it's 1-0.
Yeah.
I go, right, I better go finish this off. Hear another cheer. I missed both the first 2 goals unloading a dishwasher today. I was like, can you not wait? Can we delay kick-off, please, or something?
You weren't the only person to miss 2 goals this week, but we'll come on to that later. I had a right drama, but I'll talk to you about it later. Yeah, I did, yeah. Did they just not bother defending then? Was that the thing? I did watch the game, but it just, to me, looked like, in the second half, it was one of those classic Premier League games where it was just attack, let's see who scores from the chances, and Chelsea took more chances. That seemed to literally be what happened.
I think it was a combination of both teams being incredibly clinical when chances did fall their way, but also just lapses at the back and errors. Obviously, there was the Coleman own goal, which was a little unlucky, but it seemed as if both teams had just decided, screw it, we're going to just score as many as we can. And I think, did it go to 4-3 at one point? I think it was Eto'o who scored a goal for Everton to pull it back to 4-3.
I think it went to 3-2, and then Chelsea scored a 4th, and it was 4-3.
Yeah, it was a really bizarre game because it was just so fast. It was just one of these games where you really didn't have time to dwell on what you were witnessing. All the goals seemed to be immediate replies to one another. It was just really bizarre. It was as if both teams just had defensive lapses, and I think Mourinho is going to be particularly, out of both managers, disappointed that that's the case.
Yeah, but both teams last season were kind of applauded for how good they were defensively. You look at the back fours, and you look at them and you think, yeah, they're strong back fours, but to concede, both teams concede 3 minimum, at a very minimum. Everton obviously conceded 6, but you don't expect that from an Everton-Chelsea game. You obviously didn't.
No, I didn't. There was 5 goals in the space of 8 minutes.
Were you banking on a 0-0?
I was hoping for it, but it didn't come my way.
So I want to talk about Costa because it was funny. He has a little bit of a scuffle with Coleman, and then when Chelsea score, he gets the ball and shouts in Coleman's face. Danny Murphy, match of the day. We were applauding him during the World Cup. He was our favourite pundit, right?
Yep.
And then when asked about it match of the day, he just went, "Yeah, I like that, love that."
I actually liked it.
Do you?
See, I liked it because Coleman had given him a lot of crap, and clearly Martinez, being from Spain, knew that one of Diego Costa's issues is that he can get quite hot-headed and it can throw him off his game. And I feel as if the Everton players were almost given a little mission to do that, and there'd been a few times where Coleman had stood on Costa's toes, and there'd been a few niggly little challenges off the ball.
Yeah.
And so I quite enjoyed it. I'm going to be honest, I was there like you.
There is the classic kind of night out moment when some mates have just joined late and they didn't realise what went on before. So Costa gives Coleman shit, and Coleman's like, "Oh yeah, fair enough. I did give you a kick earlier." And then immediately, as Costa runs off, Tim Howard's out of his goal, going, "You what, mate? You what? What have you just said to him? What have you just said to him?" And Coleman's just like, "Leave it, Tim. Leave it." Tim's not a very aggressive name actually when you think about it like that, is it?
Timothy.
Tim Howard sounds like an estate agent, not a Premier League goalkeeper.
I don't know. I disagree.
Tim Howard's Homes. That's what he should start when he's finished football.
All right, I'll let him know.
Treat him. You'll let him know. I didn't realise you had contacts to Tim
I have
Howard.
many contacts.
You never mentioned this during the World Cup, but it was necessary. So yeah, Chelsea come out on winners, and they look pretty. After watching that game, I genuinely thought, and then obviously because City lost, I thought they're going to walk this league. That's probably the season right there. I honestly think Chelsea will win the league by the end of April.
Did you know that it was the 7th highest Premier League scoring game in history?
Was it? I won't ask you for the other ones because you won't.
Do you want to know what the biggest one was? I bet you could never guess the teams involved. It's a really weird one.
It was Portsmouth Reading. Thank you very much. I'll take that.
What was the score?
7-4.
Who to?
Pompey.
Wow. Okay. Either you've got the same notes as me in front of you.
Is it? Tell me
Maybe it is.
I've won the quiz. I'm doing a dance.
Congrats.
I've won the quiz. Someone scored a hat-trick. It was Ben Gianni. I've not even got it in front of me. I'll send you my screenshot right now. I'll print screen that.
No, it's fine, Ben. I believe you. Right.
Thank you.
So, what are both managers going to take away from that game, if anything? Is it a case of worrying defensive issues for both teams, or is it one of those games where you just kind of look at it and go, yeah, it was just a weird game of football, really?
Yeah, I think Mourinho was kind of saying, "Oh, we'll just write this one off," but today on the training ground, well, actually, it won't be. Well, they're all on international duty, so they'll get away with it. But he will be looking at a game so much during the next 2 weeks, going, "We're going to fix this. This isn't happening again. We're not conceding." I bet Chelsea. I would put money on now Chelsea not conceding 3 goals again this season, and this will be the only time. I honestly think Chelsea are going to walk the league. And I've been back in City all pre-season, and even last week, 2 weeks ago, I was thinking City will do this. Everyone's talking about Chelsea, and now I look at the Chelsea squad and think, we'll come on to it, but they've bought superbly. And they've filled every hole. Yeah.
Should Martinez be a little worried? I mean, it was good, I guess, for him to see Eto'o come on off the bench and grab a goal, but, I mean, 6 goals to concede. Yes, it's against Chelsea, but when you consider kind of, I guess, Everton's record at Goodison Park, you really back them not to concede 6 in any game. Like, it's not really acceptable, I don't think.
No. Especially at home, but I think you kind of made the point. You kind of brushed over it a little bit, but I think the fact it's Chelsea makes it far better than it being a Southampton, like a rival in that sort of role.
Yeah.
Even if it was, I don't mean to be critical of a team unfairly, but even if it was United, you'd be like, they can't score for toffee against Burnley, and they come to Goodison and score 6. But the fact it's Chelsea, I think, does kind of, it's just that you just go, like, I hate to use a jarred phrase, but you go again. Yeah, you just think, well, that's gone now. We don't have to do that again. So, and you know what? Everton are the kind of team that will go to Stamford Bridge and win a 1-0.
Yeah.
So
it's quite weird, actually, because normally, like the Newcastle game we're going to come on to, like 3-3 against Palace, that would be considered the high-scoring game of the week, and that would be considered, you know, like the real, what a match that was. It was end-to-end and whatever. But the Everton-Chelsea game really kind of puts this one into perspective, but it was a pretty crazy game with a pretty crazy finish. I don't know where you want to start with this one.
Well, in reality, you know the Newcastle Palace has been high-scoring because we're talking about it. You would have missed the Dwight Gale goal, Jack, because it was after a minute.
It was. So, 29 seconds, you'll find.
29 seconds. Well, good for him. He scored quite a few goals in midweek, didn't he? I think he scored a couple, or maybe a hat trick in midweek in the cup. But it's a good result for Palace. Obviously, you mentioned that Stephen Warnock's in charge. Oh wait, no, Neil Warnock.
Neil, Can we talk about this appointment? Because obviously that happened this week, so we've not really done too much talking on it, and we kind of glossed over, I guess, the whole Pulis thing. But for me, if I'm a Palace fan, which I'm not, thankfully, in this case, I'd be fuming at the appointment of Neil Warnock. I just don't understand it. It's like no one else wanted the job.
I'm going to flip this. I think it's a relatively good appointment because he knows the league. He's not been that successful in the league, but Tony Pulis built quite a good team. That shouldn't be forgotten. The team that Pulis has given Warnock to go about his business with had a really good end to last season, and that confidence, I imagine, is probably still there. And a manager like Warnock is quite like Pulis in many ways. He's of that kind of generation, isn't he? It's not like a young manager's come in. It's not like an Eddie Howe, for example. It's not like Eddie Howe's come in and said, right, this is how we're going to do things. We're going to change things around a little bit, and we're going to play like this. It feels like a similar brand of manager has taken over Palace. Like even Sherwood, I think Palace would have been worse off with someone like Sherwood and better off with someone like Warnock, because I think it'll just feel there'll be that same kind of feeling around the club.
Yeah,
but you don't agree, because you don't think he's very good.
Well, no, I can kind of see the argument that he's similar in some ways to Pulis, and because he's been at the club before, it's kind of he knows what's expected of him. But just in my opinion, I'm just very dubious, and I think they'll actually suffer because of it. I don't think anyone kind of expected Pulis to get what he got out of the players he had, and as much as you said, they've got a strong squad now, I think that strong squad was so strong because of the way Pulis had them line up, because of how disciplined he was able to get those players. And I don't know, for me, Neil Warnock is not a particularly disciplined manager himself, and I'm not sure how he's going to be able to instill that in his players.
I think he's relatively disciplined, but I think Palace's survival may well depend on like who is worse than them. They might have one of those seasons of Palace will stay up if there's three teams worse. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Palace 17-16.
So obviously Neil Warnock made one transfer yesterday in the transfer window. I don't know if you know who this was. It was a bit of a weird one. Kevin Doyle from Wolves.
Oh, it was quite late on, wasn't it?
That was a really weird one that came out of nowhere. Jim White stood there at like after the deadline going, I just got a phone call. Yeah, Kevin Doyle signed. And it was a bit of a... Obviously, Wolves have got to get some players off their books because of financial fair play, and Doyle's one of the players left over from that Premier League era, so he's still on the big-ish money. And their financial fair play in the Championship means that they're kind of in issues-ish at the moment, Wolves. I don't feel like he's the transfer to make a difference.
It's funny, really, because at the weekend, Palace played 6 attacking players. They started with Dwight Gale, Shamak and Balassi, and they brought on Glenn Murray, Campbell and Zaha, and now you're throwing Doyle into that. And to me, it feels like the Premier League side who thinks, what keeps you up in the division? Strikers, yeah, we'll get another one. And if it all goes
Manchester United have probably taken that thing as well, for how to stay in the Premier League.
We'll bring another one in. And I feel like that's the classic kind of end of the window. Who's available? Which good strikers? Oh, Kevin Doyle. Yeah, he scored 12 goals in a Premier League season once. Get him in. And that seems to be what's happened. And I don't think he's necessarily what they need. They may need another kind of strong central midfielder, but I think they'll be in the dogfight. We talked about the dogfight in the preview shows. They'll be in the dogfight.
On the flip side, United. We'll talk about United in a bit. I'm keen to get them in the dogfight, but no, let's talk about Newcastle because obviously it's a good result for them in terms of to get a point, I think, against Palace, particularly when you consider the fact they hadn't actually scored in their first 2 games. So to score 3, even though they've conceded a lot, including a 95th minute Zaha goal on his return, which was a little bit of a fairy tale ending, I think there's some positives to take away there as a Newcastle fan.
Yeah, like you say, I think scoring 3 at St James's will give the whole team and the fans probably a little bit of confidence. I will call it St James's. I know it's changed, but I'm not calling it what you call it.
Sports Direct Arena now.
Yeah, I'm not calling it that. No,
I know that stadium name. Not going to get that muddled up.
But it is a kick in the teeth, isn't it? To score in the 88th minute, to go into a lead, and then to see that lead snatched away on 90 by Zaha. That's going to leave a bit of taste in the mouth. I do think with Newcastle, though, they're going to be a bit of a slow burner. I think maybe come the Christmas period, I think they'll have a really good little run there. I don't know who they've got. I've not looked into it, but I just feel like they're a team that will, once they get Cabella, I think Cabella is the key. because he was so good last year in Ligue 1. I think this year, if you get him playing and he controls and dictates games, then Newcastle could be in for a very strong second half of the season.
We talked a little bit about it, didn't we, kind of at the start of the season, and I said to you, I thought Newcastle might be a team who really step it up this year. After last year where they'd had a disappointing performance, you consider, a few years before where they'd been right up there, even kind of maybe contemplating Europe, I expected them to easily kind of cruise into kind of a Southampton-ish position this year. Kind of Southampton last year finishing 8th, comfortable top half of the table, have it done by Christmas. And obviously not scoring in their first 2 games, perhaps somewhat worrying. I know they did get, a point in one of those games. But, where do you see this Newcastle team going now that you've seen them 3 games in? Is it a team that can realistically push on and get that top 8 thing, or is there an element of doubt still for you?
Am I right in saying they finished 10th last season? If it wasn't 10th, it was very close to 10th.
Yeah.
And I think they'll do exactly the same this year. I think certain teams have stepped up their game a little bit. I think Stoke are one of them. I still think Southampton will have quite a good year. You expect Everton not to be where they are, and I think they'll be the top 7, including Everton again. I do think Everton will be back up there. And then you might have Stoke. It'll be interesting to see how Hull get on. I think they're a really interesting kind of problem almost.
So speaking about Hull, obviously the Ben Arthur transfer happened. Is that going to hurt Newcastle at all?
No.
I know he didn't play, but is that one? Because for me, Ben Arthur is the kind of player who I kind of feel like he has the ability to show it, but there was something like almost I don't know what the word is, but essentially whenever he put on a Newcastle shirt, it just didn't seem to happen for him. I know he's quite greedy. I know he can be quite selfish on the ball, but I kind of feel like in a different setup that it would kind of pay off a little bit more.
I think Ben Arthur had his chance at Newcastle. I know he had a horrific injury in his first year, but I think he had his chance to put the work rate in, and he didn't. And Newcastle fans see him now and they think, you know what, he's a flair player who can change a game, but he doesn't change enough games to start week in, week out. And I don't think they'll be too disappointed to see him go out. Maybe they're disappointed to see him go to Hull, because
it's a bit of a weird one
of Newcastle, but geographically that's not that far away, is it?
No, not really.
I know. Hull. We'll come on to it later. In terms of the other fixtures, obviously we could talk about the big game, but I don't want to talk about Liverpool every week.
I thought we were talking about Burnley, but
there were wins for Liverpool, Villa, Southampton, Swansea and QPR. United and Arsenal both drew against newly promoted teams. So we could have talked about that. So I will say to the fans of the newly promoted teams, to Leicester and Burnley fans, well done. We're very proud of you. And if you beat one of them, we'll talk about it next week. So, in 2 weeks' time, international break, boring. So then, Jackie Balboa.
Liverpool. Should we talk about Liverpool? Because I know you had an issue in the Liverpool game, which you alluded to earlier against.
Okay.
What happened, Ben? Tell us.
So, it was the day before my birthday yesterday, folks. Just throwing that in there.
In case you didn't know.
Late gifts are accepted. So, but no, I sat there first half, enjoyed the first half. I actually thought Tottenham were going to beat us yesterday, or whenever it was. When was it? Sunday. I thought Tottenham were going to beat us on Sunday. Didn't turn out like that. Tottenham didn't put in a very good performance, and Liverpool did. First half, enjoyed that, Jack. First half was good, right? We were both sat there thinking, yeah, this is good. It's going well. Enjoyed your little half-time break. Just went and got a cup of tea. Came back upstairs. Whistle goes. Bang. Power off everywhere. Down the whole street. Great Yarmouth, where I live, has a blackout. The borough of Great Yarmouth.
In the middle of the day?
It wasn't. It didn't go dark, but everything went off. The 72nd minute, we were back on 3-0 at that point. I missed a good bit. No more goals. So
we won't talk about Liverpool because I know we've talked about them so many weeks in a row. People are just sick of it. Are biased.
Do you know what the worst? Well, can I tell you what the worst bit of the park was?
Tell me.
The wireless radio still worked, and the commentary was on TalkSport.
Oh dear.
Stan Collymore. Didn't enjoy that.
I would have just turned it off.
Well, Jack, I hate to say this. I did. I let Twitter help me. I was thinking, I'm not listening to Collymore.
That's probably a better option.
Oh my God, and there's a throw-in, and I can't believe it. It's a fantastic throw-in. I was thinking, shut up, Stan. I'm getting off this.
Should we give a shout out to two other teams who did surprisingly well, I think, in many people's eyes? Swansea and Southampton.
Well, Swansea, are they top of the league still, or have Chelsea just pipped them?
Chelsea have pipped them by 2 goals.
Okay, but they've had a really good start to the year.
They have. Yeah. And then the other team, of course, was Southampton, who won 3-1 against West Ham. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I mean, I doubted Southampton. I'm going to be completely honest. At the start of the season, I was very worried for them. And then they showed up against Liverpool, and I kind of thought to myself, if they keep putting those performances in, they should really get top half. That's like a realistic thing. And I doubted them, and I look at them now, and they're 6th in the league.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Southampton, because we can segue nicely now into the transfer portion of the show. Southampton were the talking point. They were the thing of the transfer window. It became a thing. Some of the outs, Chambers, Lovren, Lallana, Lambert, Shaw, they were gone, and they brought in a hefty amount of money. And Koeman, we said he had a big job. We spoke about it in the previous shows. And I think he's done quite well. You mentioned they won at the weekend. Some of his signs are really paying off, and they made a couple more on deadline day. They brought in I've always pronounced his name Alderweireld, but apparently it's Alderweireld, something like that.
Who knows?
But anyway, from Atletico Madrid, and I think that's a really good signing. He was tipped to go to Norwich last year, and it fell through because he didn't think they were big enough. And then Atletico came in like a day later, and he was like, "Yeah, I think I'll go there," and he won a Liga with them. But with Southampton signings, do you obviously think they might have quite a good year now? You've been impressed.
Yeah, I was really impressed by Pele and Tadic. You have both kind of come in and did a little bit of work. I was a little bit disappointed to see the departure of Ramirez. I think him going on loan to Hull is maybe a little bit of a mistake. He did come on at the weekend. Shane Long, I'm not the biggest fan of, but I actually think one of the biggest transfers they made, and it's not even a transfer technically, was just keep holding on to Schneiderlin. Because I feel as if he is a real rock for them. And I mean, we talked a little bit about it off air, how you look at the big teams and their lack of defensive midfielders, and you look at perhaps Tottenham letting go Sandro, one of their best defensive midfielders. I honestly feel as if Jack Cork and Schneiderlin had gone, it would have been a big issue for Southampton trying to fill that position, because there just aren't that many options. But I do feel like what they've managed to kind of pull together, I'm still not convinced defensively by Fonte and Yoshida, I'm going to be completely honest. But I think they have enough about them now to really push on for a mid-table finish, just based on what we've seen.
I think Alderweireld will play in that centre-back role. I think
he has to. But even then, I mean, it's not difficult, is it, to sit on the shoulder of the worst of the two centre-backs?
I think him and Fonte will do it. I think those are the two they'll play. I think they'll do a relatively good job. I don't think they're too bad. I think at the back they're okay. Bertrand, those two, and Klein, I think so. You may say it's an average Premier League defence, but that's all Southampton are right now, is an average Premier League team. And that's maybe fine. That's not me being harsh. I think that's fine. I know they had a good year last year, but they are the classic 8th to 12th team this season. Yeah, and I've no doubt that's where they'll finish. You mentioned Schneiderlin. I am so surprised that Arsenal didn't just throw 15-20 million at Southampton and say, we'll have him now, please. Bring him over. Yeah,
I mean, that was something that we talked about Arsenal needing last year, me and you. We talked a little bit about their lack of a Vieira-esque character. Certainly Schneiderlin doesn't fill the Vieira boots perfectly, but I do have great concern over Arsenal in the centre midfield area and in the final third, even with the addition of Welbeck. I mean, when you're being linked with Zidic at one point, I mean, it's not exactly the most promising sign in the world, is it?
Okay, let's talk about Arsenal, because I do think they're one of the more, to quote a Jackism, they're one of the more interesting teams. They brought Debussy in, Chambers. I think Chambers looks excellent. Get Chambers in the England squad, get him playing. I think he looks like their best signing, frankly. Sanchez, one of the bigger deals of the window. I think we've said so many times, and it applies to Falcao as well at United. Absolutely phenomenal player. It applies to Di Maria too. Great player. Not the first thing they needed. And that's where it kind of they've bought those two teams. We'll talk about United straight after this. They've bought players that any team in the world would have in their squad and go, really good player. But it's not for me where either of these two teams needed someone, and that's the crux of it. I
look at the Arsenal's midfield defensively, in terms of deeper players who can play that. You've got Arteta, Flamini, Diaby.
No, Diaby's gone, right?
Has Diaby gone at this point? I think he might still be there.
He's been gone for 4 years, but he was still contracted.
I think he's still there. But I look at those three, and then obviously you have got other players who might be able to drop slightly deeper. But it's not good enough for me. I think Flamini is not past it. I think he has the occasional good game, but he's just not consistent enough. I think Arteta is great in that deeper position in terms of really being able to craft out opportunities and ping the ball around, but I don't feel as if he has that kind of hunger in the midfield to really win back the ball and recycle possession for them like they need a player to do. And I actually think that's a problem that we're going to see United have as well, with the fact Fletcher is that player right now. That worries me, and it would worry me if I was a United fan that that's not been sorted this window. Just
to clarify, Diaby is still there, but he's played 16 games in some, and that's not starts. He's featured in 16 games in the last 3 seasons. So what you can expect from Abu Diaby, I don't know.
Injuries.
But yeah, just injuries. You can expect injuries. Overall, I think Arsenal fans will be like we talk about Arsenal like they've got a terrible midfield.
No,
they've got a good midfield, but you mentioned it. They don't have that Vieira, and Arsenal fans know this. It's not like we're going, oh, by the way, guys, you don't have a Vieira type character. They know. They're fully aware of that. The midfield's good. It's just it needs a rock, and I don't think Flamini's like a pebble in that formation.
Should we talk about another team lacking a rock in United? And I think this rock's needed further back. And the rock's eroded over time.
Let's go through a few of these, because I can't believe Arsenal and United just haven't bought a defensive midfielder. Maybe both managers went, we don't need one, and maybe I'm completely wrong, and maybe they'll both surprise me this season without needing one. Rojo come in. I think he's once he gets clearance on his transfer, I think he's a really solid buy.
What is the deal with that? He had an argument with his neighbour, did he, or did he not?
Some nonsense, but he's a professional footballer on loads of money. He's going to be fine.
I just love him to get banged up for it. United sign a player, instantly gets locked up in Portugal.
But he's been training with them, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's weird. He can't get international clearance or a work permit, but he's allowed to train with them.
I don't know how it's working. Luke Shaw, who apparently is fat or just unfit. I love it. Can I just say, there's something about that this week where Van Gaal went, yeah, Luke Shaw's just unfit. Then Hodgson went, yeah, I thought he was unfit. Hodgson just get it on Van Gaal. Like, oh, yeah, I thought so too. And then Van Gaal's like, don't you talk about my players? Yeah. It's just like, hang on, what? Have you missed the bit where you talked about him first?
I mean, JV Blind. Is it Blind or Blind? I don't know. Blind. We'll go with Blind. I know we have a lot of Dutch viewers, so you guys can tell me if I'm completely wrong. He can play that defensive role, but I kind of feel like he's more likely to slot in at left back.
Ajax fans, tell me if I'm wrong, but 2 years ago, Daley Blind was the best left back probably the best Dutch left back, if you want to put it like that way. He was absolutely superb for Ajax, and this season they moved him to play defensive midfield for the first time in his career. Tell me, Dutch fans, I know you will, so tell me if I'm wrong. Moved him to play central midfield, where he was the standout defensive midfielder in the Dutch league. Now, I don't want to poo-poo the Dutch league, Jack, but it's very rare that a player from the Dutch league, the only real standout I can think of was when Suarez came from Ajax, but even in his first year at Liverpool, he didn't set the world alight. He was just average, and it's funny to me that Blind's come in, and every time you say to United fans, we've not bought a defensive midfielder, they go, yep, Daley Blind. It's like, well,
I can think of one other exception.
Okay,
Ruud van Nistelrooy
came from PSV.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll take that. That's a good one. Did you just look up that he came from PSV?
I was checking. I wanted to make sure before I got it completely wrong. So I just have a quick check.
And the most interesting point of the Daley Blind transfer is that he's had a fantastic year for Ajax playing in defensive midfield, and then the World Cup comes around, and it may be due to necessity, and it may be due to the fact that the Dutch squad had Nigel de Jong to play in the centre with a couple of others, but Van Gaal immediately moves Blind out to left wing back, and then goes to United and buys him. And obviously Van Gaal's never played Daley Blind in a defensive midfield role, but he has played him in that left wing back role. So I don't really know. I don't think anyone knows what you've signed. And United fans can say, well, he can play there. Well, if he can play there, I can play there, but it doesn't mean I'm going to be exactly what you need in that situation. So I think the Blind transfer is interesting. I can't believe we focused so much on the United defence. They still needed someone like Hummels, but it hasn't happened. Di Maria and Falcao.
I mean, Evans, Jones, and Smalling isn't that bad. I'm saying that through gritted teeth. It's not a championship quality. Champions League quality defence. Slip of the tongue there, United fans.
But
I think it is a back three that if they get fit, and that is a huge if, because I mean, I don't even think they played alongside each other as a three yet in the United shirts. It might work, but my main worry is, and it's a worry that I think a lot of United fans will share, is the fact that players like Blackett have had to get promoted into the team. There's been other players who they're not ready, and I feel as if that depth at the back, in the centre-back positions, this is all assuming they're going to stick with the three at the back. We talked a little bit about it. I have a feeling United are probably going to switch to a 4-3-3. And I think it'll involve something like playing Di Maria on the right, Mata on the left, and then Falcao or Van Persie with Rooney in behind. And then two holding players, maybe like...
maybe you'll play Blind and Herrera and play Shaw left back.
That's what I would take a stab at.
You've still got Fletcher, and you've still got Fellaini, and you've still got Cleverley. Still there.
He's not gone, has he? He was desperate. He's driving across England going, please take me in. Turn to Aston Villa.
Laps. Eventually, he went to Villa and he was like, right, I'll just do laps at the M25. Someone down here is going to want me. Surely.
Just turned up at Everton's training ground. No, Tom, we're not interested.
Yeah, Tom, we didn't want you.
His contract runs out at the end of the year, and I think that was actually a stumbling block, because I think United were probably looking for more money than...
Yeah, now probably really just go on a free. Yeah, he'll go to Newcastle. I'll say it now.
He's making that call now.
Yeah, it'll happen.
So we've talked about United here. We've talked about United without talking about the big one. I don't know how it's taken us this long. Falcao. I don't understand.
We should gloss over Di Maria. He's come in. I'm done with that bit now. Falcao. Is Falcao the greatest distraction in football transfer history? Because we've just talked about how much Manchester United still missed a rock at the back, a Hummels, a Garay, someone really good, a Shawcross, for example. They've brought in Falcao for about, I think it's like 12 million this year. It's rumoured between 5 and 20, so I'm going 12.
Just going to pull out a number.
Yeah, I'm going 12. And apparently you're going to, like, the rumour is they can't buy him this year because of financial fair play, but he's guaranteed to sign at the end of the year. Like, it's a done deal, but they can't announce it, or they can't pay for him yet.
I'd love to ask United fans, would you rather have kept Welbeck and Hernandez, or Hernandez is the Brazilian Lazio centre mid, and bought a defender, or would you have rather have sold those, or got rid of those two players, because obviously Hernandez is out on loan, and loaned in Falcao with a view to sign him? Because to me, it just doesn't really make sense. I loved someone on Twitter, and I wish I knew this person's Twitter handle, but it was like a semi-viral tweet. It was like, signing Di Maria and Falcao is a bit like buying someone who requires a heart transplant, a pair of tits.
Yeah,
it's just,
I saw that.
It looks great, but it's not what you really need. It glosses over the underlying issues, and I mean, the Di Maria one, the more I look at it, the more it kind of makes sense that he might play in the midfield. You know, either on the left if United go to a 4-3-3, or down the middle if they stick it out at this midfield. The Falcao one, literally the only reason I can think this has happened is because they're looking for a big marquee player who's willing to come to them when they're not in the Champions League. And they've tried to sign a player in the position they need, a Hummels, they've tried Vidal, and they've just kind of gone, right, who can we actually sign who's going to get fans excited? And Falcao's that option. I mean, I might be completely wrong. Falcao might now score 25 goals this season and fire United to Champions League football, because we saw last year with Liverpool and Man City to a certain extent, you've not got to have the best defence in the Premier League so long as you can bang in goals and outscore teams. And I wonder if that is the kind of road that United are going to be going down here, in terms of trying to, I guess, gloss over their defensive fragilities by just, I guess, debatably having three of the best attacking players in the world.
The thing that blows my mind about United, and we have, sorry we're talking a lot about them, but we have to, because it's never, this sort of thing's never happened
before.
It's
the story, isn't it, as well, of the window, really.
It's the fact that we've had the Ferguson Moyes nonsense, then we've had Van Gaal come in, and it's not gone very well at the start. They've lost to MK Dons midweek. For me, it just, like, the money they've spent on Di Maria and Falcao they could have just paid over the odds for Hummels and Vidal, and this squad would look so much better. And I can't stop thinking, what the hell is Robin Van Persie thinking? Because if you think Falcao's come to sit on the bench just because he's a loan signing, you're having a laugh. Falcao's 28, he's in his prime, he's ready to go. Van Persie must be thinking, one, I've not been made captain. That's why I mention it, because Rooney's still there as captain. And then he's got players like Mata and Di Maria behind him. So he's not even going to get to play kind of out of his position due to requirement. What's he going to do? He's not going to play. So, and they're not in Europe. So is Van Persie being saved? And I'd say for Capital One Cup games, but sorry, no fans, but you're not even in that. So what are you going to do with these? How are you going to keep 3 players over 200 grand a week happy?
You're not.
Go. You're not. So one of them's going to leave in January or at the end of the season. And it's just like you're making. Obviously, Falcao is on loan, so he may go out again. But if you believe what you read, and a lot of journalists were saying that it's been done, but they can't sign him yet because of FFP, and they were just waiting to see it through next year.
Right. So we're getting bogged down in kind of the big teams, I feel. We've talked about a few of the more obvious stories. Obviously, Chelsea, not to gloss over them, because I think they've had probably the best transfer window out of all the teams in terms of, I think their net spend is around 8 million, thanks to, obviously, the Luis sale to PSG. One team I really want to talk about, and we touched upon them earlier, is Hull.
Yeah.
Hull, for me, I might have had one of the strongest transfer windows for a mid-table team, which I think is a fair assessment of what they are at this point. I mean, I look at some of the players they signed in. You look at who they brought in on the last day. They got Diame, Ben Arthur, and Gaston Ramirez, and then they also got Hernandez. From Palmero in Italy.
Palermo, yeah.
I don't know what to make of that transfer, but that's a big one because they've been looking for that striker. Obviously, they let Shane Long go. And they also let George Boyd go, I believe I'm correct in saying.
Yeah, Boyd's gone to Burnley.
Yes, and they were looking at Jordan Rhodes, and obviously we all know that Blackburn they're not going to sell Jordan Rhodes to anyone, and they've kind of made that stance for so long now. I look at this Hull City side, and I think their biggest strength is actually the quality in their midfield, but I think the biggest detriment they're going to have, and it's something that you mentioned earlier, is just a crap attitude in some of these players, and it's going to be a case of can Steve Bruce really get the most out of some of these players and really get them working for, I guess, the shirt.
Yeah, I think Diame is probably the most underrated but best signing of that. They've got obviously they're in Europe, and their squad has become, especially midfield, I think their midfield now is looking really good. Obviously they've already got Huddleston and Livermore. Obviously Snodgrass is out for 6 months, so that's why they've brought in Ben Arthur and Ramirez, because they lost a player they'd spent 8 million on. Tom Ince is there. I just wonder, you mentioned it, I wonder the work rate of these players, how much they're going to get out of an Hernandez, Ramirez, Ben Arthur, Tom Ince. I don't know who's going to be doing the legwork if that was a front four. Then again, Huddleston and Diame and Livermore as a 3, and they're not the only players in that squad. They've also got a couple more, like Eric Myler's not bad in that role. I think they've had, on paper, it looks incredible. Like to have, because all these players have looked. Obviously we're known for football manager business, but it's they're 4 football manager signings, aren't they? Ben Arthur, Ramirez, Diame, and Hernandez.
They are indeed.
So it's just going to be. I just wonder what Steve Bruce is going to do. He's added flair, Jack. That's what he's done, and he's got Michael Dawson at the back, who everyone thinks is a brilliant signing, but he was pretty shit last year. Yeah.
We talked a little bit about Diame. Obviously, West Ham probably making the steal of the transfer window, in my opinion. Alex Song on loan. That's a weird transfer. Like that is just. I love actually what West Ham have done this year, because they brought in Zarate from Vélez, who I talked a little bit about in the preview show that we covered at West Ham, saying that if he was a player who could bang in 15 goals, they'd have a good season, and obviously he has scored with Sheringham, their new attacking coach. But the thing I love most about this entire West Ham side is the fact that they've gone from having no strikers to just having a load at once.
Yeah, I'm just looking on the BBC website now. They've got 9 strikers. I think some of them are youth players, but like Enna Valencia, Carlton Cole, Sacco, Zarate, Carroll's obviously injured, and Vazde. They're not all high quality, but they've got numbers. And as you mentioned, Alex Song he's one of the. I think Zarate may be better signing, but Alex Song's quite the player.
Kouyaté as well, actually, the Senegalese. I believe he used to play in defence, and he's kind of been moved up a little bit more to midfield last season. And I think he has been playing at defence for them. I might be completely wrong with that, but I was quite excited by him as a signing coming in.
I think West Ham's midfield and attack look quite good. I think their defence looks a little bit vulnerable, but it's settled, and that's what I keep in mind. They've got, I do believe they play Cresswell at left back now, and he's kind of been the final fit to that jigsaw at the back. And West Ham have started the season all right. It's not been amazing, but it's just been like kind of steady. Beating Palace, losing to Tottenham, which is not really a disgrace, and getting beat by a Southampton side that we were raving about earlier. So that may be the only one they're a little bit about, but it's not too bad at all. Where do you want to go next? We could talk about the team that I think's done the best business, but I don't mind.
I don't know what team this is, so feel free to throw the curveball in.
I mentioned it earlier, kind of, but I think Chelsea. And there's a reason I think Chelsea will win the league, because I think Chelsea have made every signing they could have possibly made. I think Felipe Luis at left back is a class signing. I think Fabregas is the exact player they needed in the middle. Out of all the players they could have signed, he's the one. Fabregas, people underrate Fabregas' tackling ability. Like, he wins the ball back and plays it so often. Then you got Costa up front. And those three alone, and obviously you got Courtois. I mentioned Courtois as well. Those four players they've just it's like Chelsea had four pieces left of their jigsaw that needed filling, and Mourinho went, okay, we'll just go get them then. And he just got them.
And he did it early. I know they brought in Remy yesterday, but with the exception of that, and that was a transfer that was kind of, I think, long overdue in many ways, and was part of maybe the Torres deal going out, was the need to get Remy in.
Yeah, but, like we're not talking about Chelsea or Liverpool really today, because they got it done, and like it's simple to say, but there was no. I had the least stressful transfer window yesterday that I've had for about 5 years.
I was waiting for Andy Carroll to get signed up again. I was waiting for that transfer to happen all over again. I was waiting for Kenny to just go, well, I've taken over. Yeah,
I know I'm only a director in that now, but we're going to get him back in. So that's the plan.
So if you think Chelsea did the best business, which is kind of what you're hinting at, is there a best transfer that you'd say, kind of for you, was like the one that was like, wow, that's looking like it's really going to be a kind of a shrewd signing, I guess, long term?
I think his early season form has dictated my answer, but I do think that Swansea getting Sigurdsson back is kind of the under-the-radar signing of the summer. And I know it's not a big team, and I know it's not a Jimmy Rod at Real or Toni Kroos or a Lewandowski at Bayern, but for me, Sigurdsson... just quickly, I don't want to forget it. So Chelsea's best business this season was getting 50 million for David Luiz. That's kind of gone completely... Everyone just forgot, but that was a thing that happened, and everyone was just like, yeah, Chelsea have done really good ins. 50 million. Like, the outs Chelsea did were just as good as their ins. I want to say that much. But sorry, Sigurdsson. I've talked about you and then I've ignored you. He is going to be what makes Swansea tick this year. We talked about Gomes coming in early on in the window, and a few others. But for me, if you can get Sigurdsson linking up with Boney and Routledge and Dyer, then they're going to have a really good year. A really, really good year. Not in Europe this year. I expect Swansea to do what Southampton did and just be that team again, to just surprise a few people, but be excellent. And they've started the season really, really well too.
So for me, I think the best business is probably, I kind of hinted at it earlier, but maybe Alex Song. I think it'll be interesting to see what Alex Song they get. But in terms of a team who's done the best business, I think Hull have got to be up there. In the preview shows, I really questioned Hull. I was worried about the kind of second season syndrome, that idea that you do really well first year, obviously they got European football, and that they kind of have a fullback season based on the fact they've got into Europe. They've got those extra fixtures. I know it was their third season, I think, in the Premier League. This one coming. But these signings really state to me a team with some ambition, and I think it's been very easy for teams in Hull's position in previous years to not make the signings. I think Swansea maybe suffered a little bit with that last year, where they just didn't make enough additions to really bolster themselves for a European kind of campaign. And I think Hull are very much on the flip side. And I think even in patching up the issue they had with Snodgrass getting injured, with Ben Arthur and Gaston Ramirez coming in, that shows a real intent to really crack on, I guess, and get the business done. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say the thing for me is not it's not really for me that the signings they've brought in, it's how Steve Bruce uses them. And I still believe, despite the signings they've made, and some of them are very good, that if Bruce can get the best out of them, that will be what dictates it. And I still worry for Hull a little bit, because they're in Europe. They've not got players that enjoy playing 2 games a week, it seems. Like, Ben Arthur, to me, doesn't relish playing loads and loads of games. He might completely surprise me. But I think, I said it earlier, I think the paper makes Hull signings look really good, but I think the pitch will make them look a little bit inadequate in certain games. And when Hull have got to dig in and fight for a result, I think that may be when they come a little bit unstuck. But as you say, they're ambitious signings. They're kind of they're all like semi-marquee signings. So yeah,
it's that issue of kind of work ethic, I guess, in many ways, a concern that you have with Mario Balotelli at Liverpool?
Yeah,
we've not really
absolutely.
talked about Liverpool. Is that a similar thing, but because there's a few extra faces, I guess, that have been brought in?
Yeah, Liverpool's situation is slightly different because they're not reliant on Balotelli, whereas Hull are going to have to rely on these players because they've been brought in to play. Like we mentioned that Falcao's not going to come and sit on the bench. Neither is Gaston Ramirez, Ben Arfa, or Abel Hernandez. They've come to play football for Hull City, and Balotelli, while he's come to be Liverpool's main man, he's not right now. And I tweeted it the other day. I'll just say this about Balotelli, that the trick for me with Mario Balotelli is not to make him the main man, but let him think he's the main man. And I think that's what you'll see from Rodgers this year. He'll talk about Balotelli like he's the main man, but in reality, Rodgers knows he's going to be relying on Lovren, Gerrard, Sterling and Sturridge way more than he's going to be relying on Mario. And I think that's the interesting point with that transfer. Where do you want to go next?
Worst business? I think it's kind of obvious, at least from what we've said, that I think United spending 150 million, but still looking like the team that are probably lacking people the most is, for me, that kind of outlines bad business. I
think, to go on the complete flip side, I think despite getting a draw at the weekend with Arsenal, I think Leicester fans will think we haven't quite got enough. Cambiasso, by the way, weirdest transfer of the window. We've not talked about it, but Cambiasso to Leicester is where did that come from? It was like jokingly rumoured, I thought, about 3 weeks ago. Yeah. And then this week it happened. That's I don't know, Jack. I'm going
to be completely honest, I hadn't heard about that transfer, but now that you've mentioned it, I'm very Leicester. Confused.
Well, he's at Leicester.
Have they disclosed how much that was?
I'll have a look. Free transfer. He was released by Inter.
That really is weird.
He's 34 and he's popped up at Leicester. But I still think Leicester will feel like... I don't know, if you're a Leicester fan, let me know. Are you happy with the transfers made, or do you still feel like you're missing...
They didn't spend that much money, Leicester. Like, considering the amount that the chairman had bigged up how much they were going to be willing to throw at the club, and then, you looked at some of their bigger transfers, and for me, I think one of their best acquisitions was Albrighton on a free.
Yeah.
As weird as that might sound. But I don't know. I kind of feel like Leicester might... I think they're the kind of team that come January they will realise the error of their ways and may well go out and spend big. And it may well be too little too late at that point.
What do you think about... I just want to go over a few individual transfers for different clubs, if you don't mind. I want your opinion on them. Lukaku?
A good signing. I think Everton overpaid for him compared to what they probably, if they'd waited a little bit longer in the window, they might have got him for cheaper. Yeah, I just think 30 million, yes, he's probably worth 30 million to them, like that, in terms of that's how much they'd be willing to pay. I think for Chelsea probably would have been a lot happier with nearer 20.
Another club that did a little bit of business, Sandro and Crancar have gone to QPR, but on Sandro, is that going to solve all the... It was funny to me. Joe Barton was going, oh yeah, we made a couple of good signs. I was thinking, yeah, Sandro's going to take your place, mate. Sandro at QPR, surprised?
Yes, and the reason I'm surprised is because I felt like QPR are lacking legs in the midfield, particularly.
All the players have got legs, Jack.
Well, they're lacking fast legs and
legs.
Agility. And Sandro isn't a fix for that issue. He's just not very...
Do you not think?
He's a bit old.
No, he's not.
He is.
How old do you think Sandro is?
Let me check. I feel like
he's not old.
I feel like he's 28, 29.
That's not old.
Yeah, but I don't feel like he's got a spring in his step, is what I'm saying.
That's 34.
No, but the point I'm making is I think they needed to sign a few more players who would have pace out wide. I know they have... Wait, I'm going to get this wrong here. It's Phillips, isn't it? They've got Matt Phillips, not Tommy.
Sandro's 25.
Okay, I thought he was older than that. I didn't get that. But what I mean is I think they needed some energy out wide.
Okay, that's
in the midfield. Whereas he's a holding man, isn't he? He's not a player who's really going to give you an injection of pace. I thought he was older than that, but that is a very good signing. I don't know. Has it been disclosed how much they signed him for?
4 million. Apparently.
That's a bargain. I thought he was older than that, and I was expecting them to have paid more than that. That's a good deal. I'm going to shut my mouth there. Sandro is not a bad signing, but I don't think he's what they need.
Also, I want to just get this in for you, Jack. Charlie Austin scored at the weekend.
He did. Big old Charlie. Charlie Austin for England.
He didn't get called up.
Outrageous. Outrageous. Still 2 years left of my bet.
You should be sickened. Obviously, there are loads of every single team made transfers, and we can't cover all of them. And I think that kind of brings our little transfer roundup and this week's show to a close.
Can I just talk about one more? Sorry.
He's got one more. This is
Risa to Applewell.
Oh, God.
I don't understand. Why has he gone to Cyprus?
The weather's lovely. Okay, then. That brings us to the end. ForTheFansShow.com is where you can find our links to everything. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Get on it. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to leave a like. If you can share the video, leave a comment. Let us know your best signing and worst signing of the window, and who do you think did the best and worst business. On iTunes, where me and Jack were looking at the stats pre-show. Lots of you are listening. Thank you very much for listening. It's great. Twitter.com @ForTheFansShow, Facebook.com /ForTheFansShow, and ForTheFansShow.com. Just to reiterate. Jack,
thanks, Ben, for having me today.
That's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's fine. Right. Just a little thing, public service announcement. Take your mum to see The In-Betweeners this week if you have an opportunity. She'll love it. Yeah. Have you got any closing thoughts? This has been a longer show because we've obviously talked about the transfers a little bit, a bit about The In-Betweeners and non-footballing stuff. I don't know if you have any closing thoughts for the people.
Yeah, next week we will be doing a Champions League special, European special, because there's international football, and we did 30 days of that. So feel free to go listen to our World Cup stuff if you want international football and what we think about England. But we're going to do a Champions League draw roundup.
Excellent. Right, on that note, guys, thank you so much for watching us. Ben mentioned earlier, you've got the social media stuff. You can find it all at www.forthefanshow.com. We will talk to you in a bit. Hopefully United signed... Oh, wait, they can't. We'll talk to you in a bit. That's a big...
Goodbye.
That's a big...